Hey, Bastich B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of The Unconverted. And welcome back. So on today's episode we're going to have a look at 3 arcade games that never originally got conversions to the Commodore 64. And the 3 games we're going to have a look at today are: Venture was originally released in 1981 by Exidy. Rally X was originally released by Namco in 1980. And Berzerk was also released in 1980 by Stern. All 3 of these games originated in the arcades. So let's start taking a look at all 3 games, plus a look at the original arcade versions. Venture was released in the arcades by Exidy in 1981. Exidy themselves were founded near the start of the video arcade scene in 1973, and are probably best remembered for their controversial games such as 76's Death Race, and the poor taste that is 1986's Chiller. But between those, they put out a very unique arcade dungeon crawler styled affair that resembled an RPG of that era, but was way more in tune with Gauntlet and arcade style action tropes. Your goal was to raid 3 different dungeons and steal as much treasure as you can and escape. Each level is made up of a bunch of rooms with treasure in each, guarded by enemies. The faster you complete the level, the higher your score. You're equipped with bow and arrows to take them out. Some rooms have traps, and there's also an enemy called the Hall Monster that comes out if you take too long. He's basically immortal, so running is your only option. These guys work the same way as Evil Otto from the arcade Berzerk, to panic you into dying and therefore insert another coin. It didn't look or play like anything else in the arcades at that time, and had pretty addictive gameplay despite being able to finish it pretty quickly. It only ended up receiving 3 ports, all in the early 80s, an Atari 2600 version, Intellivision version, and was a launch title for the ColecoVision, and that port is still considered the definitive home edition. In 2022, the C64 finally got a conversion, this excellent Exidy classic, courtesy of Donnie Russell. He is a self-taught C64 programmer, with the Commodore being his first computer. He got his skills started by doing magazine type-in programs, and then went on to read many books on programming and BASIC. All these skills would later be used to create this excellent version of Venture. The attention to detail here is extreme, and I love how he not only captures the looks of the arcade, but nails the gameplay spot on, with quick, fluid gameplay and a multitude of tunes replicating the sounds of the arcades and some of the home conversions. The entire arcade game is here intact for you to play, and is such a fun throwback to those early arcade days. Not only has Donnie done an excellent job with this conversion, but he has also provided the game for free, and on top of that, he's made this awesome cassette tape PDF insert, as you make your own physical copy version of the game. Like 2021, this year is giving us so many great unconverted arcade games to enjoy on our C64. And again, from myself, and I'm sure the entire Commodore community, we thank Donnie and everybody out there that are slaving away making these awesome conversions for all of us to enjoy. Thank you.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you.
The world's #1 selling home computer is now in a family pack, the Commodore 64, plus data cassette and joystick, 4 software programs including Introduction to Basic, a teach-yourself program for the whole family. The Commodore 64 Family Pack, a value of $700 for just $499.
Are you keeping up with the Commodore? 'Cause the Commodore is keeping up with you.
Berzerk was originally an arcade game released in 1980 by Stern Electronics. It was a top-down maze game where you had to blast a bunch of robots and escape each room. The game is probably best remembered for its excessive use of speech in-game by the robots, and was one of the first arcades to use this to attract players in. It only got a few ports to home systems. One of them was not the C64, although in 2013 it did get an unofficial homebrew called Berzerk Redux, which I covered in episode number 11 of New Retro if you're interested. But now let's turn our attention to this new 2022 version for the Commodore 64 by Arlasoft. Berzerk is another great arcade conversion by Nick Sherman of Arlasoft, who is no stranger to the Unconverted series if you've been watching it from the beginning. With Berzerk Redux already existing, Nick said he had absolutely no intention of converting this, but many C64 owners wanted a little bit more accurate conversion of this arcade classic, so Nick accommodated. As good as Redux is, and it is, this new 2022 version has all the speech samples from the arcade included. This version also plays extremely well, a little bit faster and feels slightly closer to the arcade in terms of speed and rhythm, and the colors, at least for me, although not much of a difference, are a little bit more vibrant than Redux. Who thought the C64 would have two great conversions of an arcade that was never converted originally? The downside here is this version is PAL compatible only, and the quality of the speech depends on how you play the game. There is a massive difference between VAS and real hardware. It's pretty noticeable. In my opinion, playing it through VAS sounds way better. Still, overall, I think this is a great little conversion to the C64, and now you have two choices for your Berzerk fix. Rally X was originally released by Namco in 1980. It was a top-down multi-directional racing game where the goal was to capture all the flags in a level while avoiding all the other racers coming after you. It was extremely popular in Japan but failed financially outside of its home country, although in retrospect it's a well-loved classic. Bizarrely enough though, it got a Commodore VIC-20 release in Japan, but due to a bunch of licensing issues internationally, the C64 version was altered and renamed Radar Rat Race and was released by Commodore International and features rats in a maze instead of racing cars, where it eventually got a C64 release. So officially it never got a direct port of this arcade game, until now. In mid-2022, the C64 finally got a Rally X conversion, and not a rat version. New Rally X64 was made by Jake of The Stuff Made and is a pretty good adaptation of Namco's early 80s arcade. It kicks off with a great little splash arcade screen, and a nice jolly music adaptation by Andrew Fisher, which is a new composition that also includes odes to the original tune and is just a great starting point. The game plays pretty well as you navigate the course to collect all the flags, with great sound effects and another cool version of the arcade's repetitive but addictive main tune. The PAL version of this game runs a bit slower than the arcade. It's pretty noticeable, but it's not game breaking by any means. But if you're a hardcore fan, fortunately it's also playable on NTSC systems, and Jake has stated that that's the way it should be played, as the speed matches the arcade pretty accurately. The graphics are simple but do a great job of replicating the arcade while still looking very C64-ish. And it's a fun little game to put on for 5 minutes to mess around with, just like the arcade. And it is really great to see this classic finally on the bread box once and for all. And thanks again as usual for everybody that helped bring these games to the Commodore 64. All of us really appreciate it. And I'll leave links in the description to download all of these games. And thanks for joining me, Bastich B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. And if you can please like and subscribe, they'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.